getting back to it, the next team that is on our list is the Denver Nuggets. Now, the Denver Nuggets are a king reputation team. And I'm not even saying that as a negative thing, right? Because over the last however many years, they got a championship. They've gone to the conference finals. They've been minutes away from representing the team, the Western Conference again in the NBA finals. So I'm not saying it as a negative, but this season alone, the defensive aspect of their team is not what it has been. And that's not even saying much because the Nuggets have never been this like stout defensive team. They've been able to get stops when it matters, but I don't know in the Jokic era where we look at them as championship caliber teams, have they been the 25th defensive team in the league? And that's where they're at right now. So my biggest roadblock for them has to be the injuries. Because in the 300 minutes that Jokic and Aaron Gordon have played together, defense has a 108 defensive rating. So Aaron Gordon's hamstring or quad, whatever may be his lower body extremity injuries, is one of the, in my mind, it is the biggest X factor of the entire playoffs. Because if Aaron Gordon comes back and he's not the version of himself we know him to be, then I just don't think this team will be able to get enough stops to win 4 playoff series. Now, if he comes back and he's 90% of the player that we know, then they're all game. This is a team that can 100% raise the Larry O'Brien trophy. But without Aaron Gordon, the defense just is, it's dreadful, man. It's really, really bad. They've had stretches where there's no CB, there's no Aaron, there's no Cam, there's no Peyton Watson. So like, it's hard to look at their advanced analytics and their game by game, like using the eye test and say they can't do it defensively because they just haven't had their guys. But should we just assume that they will have their guys? You know what I mean? There are a few teams like this across. I mean, OKC is another example of this. We're just assuming that everybody's going to be healthy or 100%. I think everybody will be able to try to suit up, right? Nobody's going to be like, oh, I'm at 90%, so I'm not going to play. But we're just assuming that these guys are going to look like the guys that we know coming off injuries, and I just don't know how realistic that is. So Aaron Gordon's injury and just the injuries for Peyton Watson and all of these guys, because some of these injuries that they're dealing with are like lingering injuries more than just like, something that can be patched up. And he just like that, like a game of 2K, he says he's healthy, so he's back out there playing to their fullest potential. But we know what Yoke can do, obviously, as an MVP caliber player. We know what Jamal Murray can do as an all-NBA caliber player, especially this season. But they do need to get stops at the end of the day. And they've been so damn close before, and I think they could do it again, but it does depend on Aaron Gordon and Peyton Watson and CB being healthy and Cam being healthy and so on and so forth. Moving on to the New York Knicks. Like I mentioned earlier, there have been times in the season where the Knicks look like the exact team I think they could be, where they are a team that I can see winning 4 playoff series and being the champion. But there's also other times where I watch them, it's like, man, they're really, really missing something. So I think their biggest roadblock is going to be their defense versus the real competition, right? We had a little stretch. I think I talked about it last week on Small Ball, if you watched that episode or listened to that episode, where at that moment of time, over the last 2 weeks, New York Knicks had the number 1 offense and the number 1 defense in basketball. I was like, oh my God, the Knicks are putting it together. And then you take a peek outside of the advanced analytics, you say, hey, they beat the Nets by 60. They beat this other bad team by 30. And you add all those together, and yeah, you have the number 1 defense in that span. Even right now, over the whole course of the season, New York Knicks have the 13th ranked defense in all of hoops, which is insane because when you watch them on a night-to-night basis, especially when they're going against these good teams, you don't see an average defense. You see a below average defense. And if you go further than that and you say, hey, who are the teams that are getting stops or playing good basketball against other good teams? I mentioned earlier, the best team in the league at this right now is the Detroit Pistons, who are 11-4 so far this season against teams with a top 10. How do we got a top 10 point differential? So you're going against the top 10 teams of basketball by point differential. The number 1 team in that league is the Pistons, where they have the 5th ranked offense. So they're scoring against these really good teams, but the number 2 defense, that's amazing. We have teams like the Minnesota Timberwolves, who we're going to talk about them in a second, but they have the number 2 offense against great teams and the number 7 defense, passable. The Cavs are 7-8 in those respective stats. The Houston Rockets are 11-1, like in 11 in offense and 1 in defense. And then you have to scroll a little bit to say, oh, they're the New York Knicks against the top 10 point differential teams. They're 8-8. Which is not the worst thing in the world, right? Being a 500 team and good teams, that could be good enough sometimes to go to the postseason and still make a run. What is the scary part is the fact, even with the 8-8, according to the advanced stats, they're punching above their weight. They're the third best offense against good teams. You see that on a nightly basis. Even when it's Karl Anthony Towns not really knowing what the hell he's supposed to be doing and so on, they can score with the best of them. But the 20th ranked defense against those same teams, it's just not good enough. So I think their biggest roadblock is their defense once they get against those top-end teams. I think that this should be a team that can coast through the first round. We get to that second round, it's just going to get a little bit tougher. They get through that, the conference final is going to be even tougher because of that lack of stops when it comes down to going against those top teams. And I'm also looking at this. There's a couple teams at the bottom here that's like, oh my goodness. Like the LA Lakers. They have the 19th ranked offense against top 10 teams and the 27th ranked defense. Oh my goodness. Hey man, that's just the way it goes. Like, it's just the way it goes. Sometimes you got it, sometimes you don't. And the Lakers are a team we're going to talk about a little bit later as well. But the New York Knicks are that. Then we move on to the Minnesota Timberwolves. This is actually a perfect segue because I said we're going to talk about them. And the thing that I have is how much they play to their competition. I think that's going to be the biggest roadblock, where this team be having times where it's like, man, this should be an easy win. And it's not. And then they go against a really good team and they just blow their ass out. And I think it's a double-edged sword because you're like, yeah, Kenny, we go against good teams and we win these games. But when we get to those playoff series, it's just like there's going to be games where you feel like objectively they should win, whether it be because the other team is injured or they got the home court advantage or whatever. And that team just will come out there and sometimes just lay an egg. It's like, bro, y'all have so much talent here. I'm like, because my boy Ayo's on the team, you know, I'm rooting for the Minnesota Timberwolves to go out there and make some noise again because they've done it the last couple seasons, but they sometimes just play down to their competition, and that's just not something that great teams normally do. I actually want to do the reverse of this. What are the best teams in the league against the worst 10 teams? Let's just quickly run. It's not in my notes. We're gonna just run it live. The best team against bad teams, the OKC Thunder. Yeah, that makes some sense. Because their defense is 104 net rating. Oh my God. I mean, in order to have a good team, you got to beat up on the bad teams. The team that is the worst against the bad teams, you can imagine the worst team in the league, the Sacramento Kings. Minnesota has impressed me, though, as of recent, right? I truly think the Ayo Dosunmu acquisition is just one of the ones that you're going to look back on as a Minnesota Timberwolves fan and be like, man, I can't believe we got him for that. You know, because he is such an impactful player, even in the games where he may not have 15 points or so on. So, like, his first game they lost to the Clippers, that was actually a really good game for, if I remember correctly, Kawhi Leonard. This is like one of the first games, no James Harden. This is on like a Saturday afternoon. I think I got home from the podcast. It was like, oh my God, there's a basketball game on. And Kawhi Leonard did his thing. They lose that game by 20. It was a bad one. But after that, they got Atlanta. And he was phenomenal. Ayo was phenomenal in this game. I'm watching this game with tears in my eyes. Like, that's my boy. Go get you a championship, big fella. And then they got Portland where they took care of business, and then Dallas as well, where like Dallas went on a little run in that game a few nights ago. But it wasn't enough because Minnesota could get the job done. And Anthony Edwards said he wanted to go for 40, and he did go for 40. The next team is the Toronto Raptors. I think that their scoring in the half court is going to be the thing that ultimately prevents them from, you know, winning 2 playoff series. Again, it's such a good story, the fact they're even here in the first place. But if you look at half court offense across all these playoff teams that we're talking about today, just the ones we're talking about today, they have the worst half court offense, which makes sense. They just don't have a ton of creators in the half court. Even with that said, I think they could be a team that can still turn you over in the postseason, still get out on the break. But I think that is going to be, if there's anything to prevent them from doing great things, they're going to do good things, but prevent them from doing great things, it will be that. Because yeah, they're good. They're just not, I mean, they can just straight up lock up. Like, they're another one of them teams that I think, you know, I said on Numbers on the Board that there shouldn't be any sweeps in the first round this year. That's how many good teams are on basketball. And I think the Raptors are a team that at least in their first round matchup, they're going to win one of those games where the score is 91-88. You know, that's how good of a defensive team they can be on any given night. But overall, the half-court O is probably going to be the reason why. I think they are a team, especially once we get them going against, like, I think first round, depending on who the matchup is, they could be fine to get out of that one. Once we get to that second round matchup where you might see a Detroit or where you might see a New York or you might see a Cleveland or whoever the hell it may be, they're a team that I feel like in the half-court, a really smart coaching staff can really scheme up to make life hell for them in that scenario. So
hit subscribe for more news, highlights, and analysis from the NBA on NBC.